Hey, welcome everybody. It has been a long while since we've been here, but the holidays were good. Minus the fact that COVID took me out for a few days there. But I'm feeling a lot better now. The new semester of school has started, so I'm going to be trying to be a lot more consistent again. Hopefully, at least every other week, maybe once weekly. So we'll see where it goes. Today, my first guest of the year. His name is Justin. He is a double major in philosophy and psychology, and I believe a religious studies minor. Correct me if I'm wrong there.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, that's right.
yeah, so we're all just learning in school. I love all the people I meet in school. That we always have great conversations. So, without further ado, welcome Justin. How's it going?
Going good. How are you doing?
Good, good. I'm doing a lot better than I was last week. And
Good.
yep.
You had COVID last week?
Yeah, and it
Oh,
was it was pretty rough for a few days, but I don't know, it was kind of weird. It would like come in waves. Like I would be just fine sometimes, and then other times I like couldn't breathe at all.
uh,
Um,
yeah,
but
that's
yeah.
not good.
But
Yeah.
so
You had COVID Glad you're feeling
oh,
better.
yeah, my bad. I got an echo
It
going.
was
One
pretty
sec.
rough.
All right. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind though, if you could just give us all sort of like a background of your religious upbringing as well as kind of the process you went through to sort of get to where you are now. And I guess an introduction to where you are now. I don't know if it's super clear to yourself, but
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, cool. So I was raised LDS. I My parents are very strict. I couldn't watch PG-13 movies until I was like 13, and then even then, like they would moderate like what movies I could watch. I couldn't watch The Dark Knight until I moved out of my parents' house because it was too violent. Um,
um,
my dad is like the first counselor, but yeah, so maybe around like 12, between 12 and 14, I kind of decided that I didn't really fit in with the LDS Church. I didn't really like a lot of their teachings. I started reading anti-church doctrine. At the time, like it really, I think was just as like a big screw you to my parents. Like I don't really think I really like knew what I was doing. I don't, or not like knew what I was doing, but I don't think I really like cared that much. Honestly, I was just like, yeah, I'm just not really that into this, and you guys want me to follow all these rules that I just like don't really care about, so I'm just gonna show you why like I don't really care to follow them. Um, when I when I turned 17, my parents sent me to like a treatment center. It was an LDS treatment center, so I would go to church on Sundays. I had seminary, um, and
whoa.
and I met some crazy people there.
I'm sorry. I don't usually interrupt the introductions, but I've
No
never heard
worries.
of this. So this was like basically like church camp type like you weren't being treated for addiction or anything. It was just because you weren't going to
I
church?
mean, no, I was. I
Oh,
started
okay.
smoking weed when I was like 13, and then I started like smoking cigarettes when I was 14. And then yeah, when I was like 17, my parents were just kind of fed up with it, and so they sent me there. I didn't really think that I had a problem. I still don't really think that I had a problem, like compared to what it later became. And it only became a problem really because I was so adamant, like so angry about them sending me there that I really just wanted to be like, screw you guys. Like I can still like use marijuana and be like a productive person. And then like it just kind of got out of control because I was like so hell bent on proving to them. Like it was just
Yeah.
I Yeah,
So
I
the
like
treatment was for weed for the most part, but it just happened to
yeah.
have a religious like undertone or whatever.
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Um yeah. So yeah, it wasn't like yeah. Yeah, it was just like it was an LDS run facility, and so that
Okay.
was like kind of a big part of it. Like we would have scripture study in the mornings and stuff like that, but um yeah,
Okay.
so then I moved out. I got out of there. I moved out and I went kind of crazy. Like I started getting into psychedelics. I started getting into harder drugs. I kind of went a little bit off the rails. And I was like a hardcore atheist at that point. Like I was just really like, but I was a hardcore atheist because I really just wanted to stick it to my parents. It wasn't like I actually cared or like I actually had like thought about these things. I really just was like, screw you. Like I don't want to do what you're doing. Like I get that like you want me to be this way and like I'm letting you down, but like I can still be a productive person and like not be in the church. I got kind of sick of that. Uh, I finally kind of was like, why am I doing this? Like, this is really stupid. Like, I should just make my own decisions and not just keep trying to stick it to my parents. Like, I was like 21 at this point, and so I kind of got into Buddhism. I started meditating. Um, and then from there, I kind of got into philosophy, and then like I got into Taoism. Um, I still did kind of believe, like it was kind of hard to explain because like when I was leading the church, my parents were so adamant, like you felt the spirit before, like I know you felt the spirit, I know that like you
Uh-oh. Looks like we got some technical difficulties here. All right, 1 second. Well, while we wait for that, just want to remind anyone listening or anyone who might find this later through the podcast or whatever it may be, um, the Discord community is open for everybody. That's like my number one thing I want here is just to bring people into this space that like to, I mean, disagree, but also sort of see humanity in each other and whatnot. And so yeah, the Discord links are everywhere. Just no obligations. If you want to, if you like to just come listen, if you like to send text chats, we got like a religious chat going on, stuff like that. So if you like these discussions, come on over. And looks like Justin's laptop died, but quick recovery actually. Here he is.
Yo, sorry about that.
That's right.
I
Dude,
forgot
that
my
was like a
my
super quick recovery.
yeah, my laptop is like the battery is in like critical condition, so if it's not plugged in like all the time, then it just will die for no reason. So
Well,
I forgot that I unplugged it.
it's a fast reboot, so
Yeah, yeah.
cool. Well,
Uh,
yeah, so you were sort of I have to say your story is like hauntingly similar to my own with the sort of like rebellious start against the Mormon church, and I also was
yeah,
kind of just an angry atheist for a while till I realized like that's actually not like good reasoning to to
yeah,
like not believe in God or whatever, but um
right,
so yeah, it's pretty wild. So I think you
yeah,
got caught off around your Buddhism introduction.
yeah, um, yeah, yeah. I kind of yeah, I just kind of want to add to what you just said though, really quick.
Okay, yeah.
I think that actually that's what brought me to like the kind of realization that like I don't like religion. I think religion in general is just like raising a child in religion. If you're too strict, I think it really just breeds like this experience that like I've had. Like it just encourages them to like not listen to you and just like reject what you say because like you're just being too strict. Like you have to leave room like
Yeah.
to be a human. But
Yeah, I agree for sure. And I've talked to people that it's even kind of gone the other way. Not necessarily like having strict like atheist parents or whatever, but sort of like I guess just when your parents lean so heavily one way and aren't that open to exploring everything, it seems like kids sort of naturally want to go explore the other side that they were told. Like even drinking, for instance, my family and myself included has had a lot of problems with drinking, and I think part of that is because of the suppression of it so early on. It was like this very taboo thing that was so bad, like that one of the biggest sins you could do. And you sort of open that bottle and all hell comes flying out.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I don't remember where I was with my intro. Like right when my laptop died, I remembered what I was saying, and I like while it was coming back up, I remembered. But yeah,
Well, no, yeah, no worries, we can just
I was pretty much done with it. Like I just kind of got into Buddhism and then
this is
got
pretty
into
recent, right?
Taoism.
Like that's kind of where
Yeah,
you're at
I
now,
mean,
isn't
like
it?
I first started looking at Buddhism when I was like 16, like when I
Okay.
was like first moving out of Mormonism, but it was also kind of just like a screw you, like I'm not gonna be Mormon, like I'd rather be Buddhist. Like it
Yeah.
wasn't even really like I was looking at it seriously. I just really just wanted my parents to respect my autonomy, and they just like never really did as a teenager. So
Um
yeah.
yeah, one last little thing on the intro here is what I'm just curious what anti-church sort of doctrines you were like, not necessarily the books and stuff, but what first like sort of arguments or historical facts were you looking into that? Yeah.
So it was mostly stuff that had to do with Joseph Smith. It wasn't necessarily. I've seen a lot of stuff lately, like about the Book of Mormon specifically, and like discrediting like the accuracy of the Book of Mormon. But for me, it was more like discrediting Joseph Smith. Um, I don't want to get like I don't know. Do you have like a lot of LDS listeners? I don't want to be like too like because
Well,
again like I feel like if you can be in a religion and like you can accept the religion's teachings and not necessarily have to believe in like the superpower of God to save you, like and you're more just like about the philosophy and like what the religion is doing for the world, then like I'm all about that. Like if
right.
you want to help the world and you are like you think that your life is made better by loving God through like the religion that you choose, like go for it. That's awesome. Like I love that. But
Right. Yeah, and don't worry like too much. Like in my mind, there's a fine line between being critical and actually like looking into facts and reasoning and stuff like
Mhm.
that. I mean, even like for an atheist or whatever, like I wouldn't want someone to sort of beat around the bush if they thought something was illogical in like my thinking. But like you said, it's
Yeah.
just sort of with this understanding that, well, this is better for your life. And like, the people who would be offended by being critical about it probably aren't listening to shows like this. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, that's true.
so yeah, I really do think there's a fine line. Like you can really criticize someone while also seeing the humanity in them, and that's sort of what I want this show to be all about. Um But yeah, I mean, I think most of us know by now what we would say about Joseph Smith and what he did
Yeah,
wrong as a man, and
right.
what who he ripped off, the Freemasons or whoever it was. But
Yeah,
um
right. Yeah,
so
I just
yeah.
like read a lot of stuff about him having like other books and like finding other books and trying to start different religions that like didn't work out. And then I was just kind of like, yeah, I don't, pretty
Yeah.
disillusioned with it. Like I was just like, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Cool. Well, so last we talked, you kind of said, actually, the first time we talked, I felt like you were leaning more towards this Eastern religion type, like Taoism and Buddhism type stuff. But just
mhm.
recently, it seems like the path you're on now is very exploratory and essentially trying to find what you see as the common denominator in almost every religion that you've looked into.
Yeah.
Um, and so you wouldn't necessarily like find yourself as this religion or the other, but just trying to find the truth in those. So what exactly are the things that you find in common between what you've looked into?
Mostly just like I feel like most religious teachers like Jesus or like the Buddha or like most like Hindu teachers like I feel like the main points that they're usually trying to get across is like turn to the divine presence, turn to God and like accept God in your life or accept the divine presence in your life. It really depends on like which culture you're talking about, but I feel like the common factor across all religions obviously is just turn to God and like God like um, help you through your trials. I also really hate the word God. Like I try not to use it. I do use it in a lot of contexts because it's the easiest word to use that will make the most sense for the most people who are probably like listening to this. I prefer to use like the term the divine presence or like even just the universe. I just call it the universe. Um, I just believe in like a non uh, personified figure, more just like the universe as a whole, as like one living kind of being. Um, and I think you can find that in a lot more religions than people like to admit. It's Yeah, it seems like more and more people are kind of waking up to that and being less like adamant about the fact that there's some old guy in the sky who like created everything and is like watching over us. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
so I just yeah,
Yeah, um I'm with you about like the notion of God. I sort of uh like in my more, I guess, angry atheist phases, like I was like so ready to tell the whole world how I was an atheist and why it made so much sense or whatever. And um now I don't love using the term anymore. Um
Mhm.
oops. Uh because I mean, I use it in the sense of religion, like especially the Abrahamic monotheistic type religions. Like I am definitely an atheist towards all those. Um
Yeah,
and that makes more sense to me, but I don't think it's fair to completely just shut off like, well, yeah, I don't want to get into the reasoning behind what atheist means and all that stuff, but
right.
I'm saying I empathize with you on the whole notion of the word God, and like, because I was telling you the other day, I'll talk to a lot of Muslims and they'll say like, you believe in Allah, brother, and like I'm like, no, I don't, but like the fact
Right.
that I believe in this like objective morality and things like that, to them that only makes sense through the lens of God. Um
Yeah.
and on the flip side, I can understand notions of God like the universe and all encompassing natural reality. Like if that's what we're defining as God, then fine. Like I guess I'm no longer an atheist. So
Right.
Yeah, I definitely understand the word usages there.
Well, and it's like hard because it's like, okay, do I believe in Allah as Abraham or not as Abraham, as Muhammad describes it, or do I believe in Allah as the Old Testament describes it? Because they're very different. They're
Yeah.
supposed to be the same God, but they're very different descriptions and they're very different characteristics that are like assigned to God. So it's like
Yeah.
you could believe in Allah because if you look at how Muhammad describes Allah, then yes, it's basically how I'm describing God right now. But like, if you're under the impression that the Old Testament and the New Testament are the same God as Allah, then like those descriptions don't really fit what I'm talking about right now. So it's kind of hard,
So
a little confusing.
do you have like I guess any sort of idea what you I guess how you would explain the qualities of this divine source, or is that do you just leave that to like agnosticism, like you're not sure what exactly it is, but you just sense and
I'm
feel that
not
it's there?
I'm not sure what it is, but I know that it's everything. So like
Okay.
it's like I just have a really hard time when religions try to attribute just one set of characteristics to God, like God is all forgiving, God is all good, God is benevolent, God is all these good things, but then
Right.
they leave out like all of the destructive, like God created Satan, like that is part of his creation, like God like is everything. He is the entire universe. He is the workings, like the good, the bad, the yin, the yang. That's why I like Taoism, is because it's very like not God is just good. Like God is, you have to have the bad to have the good. You can't like create without destruction. You can't be sad that you're missing somebody without like knowing the good that that person provides in your life. So it's like, yeah, it's it's
So,
ineffable, you
yeah.
know.
So I always find myself recommending Spinoza to people like you because his philosophy is really cool, and I hope one day you read the Ethics because it really is. Well, they say there's two ways to read him. It's either naturalizing God or divinizing nature, and essentially, it's just what you're saying. It's just this basically bubble of all existing reality is the God, the divine source, whatever it is, and we're all sort of manifestations of it. Um,
Yeah.
and it's similar to panentheism. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
I've like heard of it, but literally like just barely like a few days ago. I think maybe
Okay.
you told me about it or I read about it somewhere. No, I read about it somewhere on Reddit actually, I think. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't really know about it.
Okay. So, other than that, basically, these sages and teachers in the past calling you to connect with this divine source and whatnot. Is there anything else that you find in common, or is that basically the start of it and everything branches from there?
Like there are more things, like there's a little more detail that like I find in common, like what turning to God means. Like I feel like it's interesting because you would think that like that, or originally like I thought um when it comes to like Christianity or like Judeo-Christian Islam, like the way that I thought that God helped you was like a little bit different than like in the other ones. But now like the more that I think about it, the more that I realize it's like kind of the same, but it's just like a little further removed. So like if you're praying to God and God is like to give you the strength like to overcome challenges and things like that, I mean that kind of is the same as if you're like in Buddhism where like the strength comes from knowing that there are bad times, and like if you know that God punishes even good people, then like it's kind of like a similar idea, but it's just like a little bit different, like a little bit different flavor. But yeah, I mostly just think that like most religious teachers, like most most religious teachers like are basically saying very close to the same thing, just with like a different cultural context over the top of it. Most of the stuff that like the religions say that make the religion different from other religions are just things that like you can't really prove, but they're all built on the same kind of ideas, in my opinion. So
Yeah. I think
yeah.
yeah, and I have a few things here, so take any one of them and run with whatever you want. But
Okay.
I think oftentimes too, like if I'm sort of like meeting you here at this idea that they do share this common core idea of turning to God, I think what ends up happening over time, more like over and over, is um they split off into sort of worshiping the man with the message. Um,
Yeah.
you know, like obviously with Jesus, this is a thing. I mean, they do believe he resurrected and is actually God in the flesh himself.
Right.
But if he wasn't, then that was just sort of a certain group of people taking the man with the message and putting him higher than God. And
Right.
I don't think Muslims try to do this, but it does even
No.
seem like sometimes they put Muhammad there.
Yeah.
And it'd probably be very offensive to them to if they heard me say that they put him above God. So I won't
It
say it
probably,
like
yeah, it
that.
would.
But and like, even Joseph Smith, it's like I remember in church a
Mm.
lot that we were just sort of like praise to the man that like got this message, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost like these religions end up really missing the whole point in the first place, which is what
Yeah.
you were telling me yesterday.
Yeah.
Um, um, but yeah, so what I was trying to explain to you yesterday, I actually feel like I've come up with a better. I was talking to you about how Eastern religions feel more kind of ground up, right? And you're
Right.
like starting with yourself, whereas these Western religions is like divine authority down.
Yeah.
Um, I think that maybe the distinction to be made that makes sense to me is that it seems like the Eastern traditions almost have this more active role. It's like on them as the human to take these steps in following the way or whatever the teaching is to find
Yeah.
that divine source or remove yourself from the suffering, whatever it may be. Whereas coming down from God in these Western traditions, it's more of this submissive, like there's an authority telling us what to do, and we just sort of have to submit and go with what God says, rather than taking more of an active role. Do you
Right.
agree with that distinction?
Yeah, I would like mostly agree with that. And I think that kind of goes back to why I thought originally that like uh the way that God helps you is a little bit different in the two is because like in Western religions it's kind of like you're expecting God to give you the strength versus in Eastern religions, it's like you have the strength within you. You just have to know that like shit happens. Like life sucks sometimes, and you just kind of have to get over it because like if it doesn't suck sometimes, then it can't be good sometimes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, I think that like, and I think that that is a problem because I think for some people it can become too like oh, God's gonna help me, like God's going to guide me to like the right place, and so like I don't really have to try or like I don't really have to like do this, but like that's I think that's just unhealthy, and like that would
Yeah.
probably just be a problem with the person and not necessarily the religion, but I feel like the religion kind of like not like guides people there, but it's like very like if somebody is that kind of person, it like kind of gives them that excuse almost.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where like Eastern religion like doesn't do that. It's like, yeah, if your life sucks, like you like that's on you. Like you don't
Yeah.
have the right attitude, you don't have the right work ethic, you don't have the right like uh like the understanding that like life sucks sometimes, like
Yeah.
so.
So I want to push back a little bit on one of the statements you made, and
Mhm.
a lot of people argue for this, and I only want to push back not because I necessarily like full blown disagree, but
Yeah.
because I'm unsure, and
Okay.
so I'd like to like sort of try to take two different stances here and see what we can hash out about it. But it's basically this whole yin and yang thing. Um, you can't have light without the dark. You can't have the good without the bad, creation without destruction. Um, and like in a lot of instances, I feel like yeah, I do agree. Like, well, I don't know. Maybe I should just take the full opposing position here, because with something
Yeah.
like light and dark, I mean, I feel like you could just have complete darkness, right? Without its opposite.
Yeah. But then like yeah. I mean like yeah, you could have complete darkness, yeah. But then there would be like no life.
It would just be darkness. And I
Yeah.
guess
We would just all
maybe
be dead.
maybe it has to be like in what we're currently observing, like because yeah, okay, so Chris actually made a good point. What would distinguish darkness? Um
Mhm.
yeah, because if we were there observing it still, like would we call it darkness at that point, or would it just be like yeah.
Like if it was like always dark, like would we call it darkness? Is that like kind
Well,
of
it's like
what
it's
we're meaning?
uh, from what Chris said, it seems like
Right. Like
would
what
we
distinguishes
would we
darkness
know
from
that it's
light?
dark basically, even no matter what we called it.
Mm.
Maybe the words don't matter, but would we
Right.
understand that it's dark because we don't have something to compare it to? But
Right.
to then even kick it back some more, like even if we don't understand it, does that take away from the fact that it would be dark? Even like yeah, see, and this is why like I love the
Yeah.
yin and yang idea, but I'm so like I don't know
Right.
why I want to fight it so bad. I have this like
Yeah.
intuition to fight against it.
Right. Well, and I mean, like, there's fish at the bottom of the ocean that, like, have literally never seen the light. So, like, they wouldn't really know, like, light from darkness, and, like, their whole existence is dark. But, like, to them, it's just, like, they have different ways of sensing. But so then, like, for them, it would be, like, touching versus not touching, like, what is,
Mm.
like, their experience. And I think there are things outside of our experience that, like, we like can't experience. I don't know. This is like a really hard question. I'm just like
I know it's
kind of
yeah.
spitballing here, like because I really don't know the answer. So
I know. And
uh,
this is what I like annoyingly like to do is try to like
no, and
split
I
every
love
single
it. Like
three yeah.
yeah, but it's like yeah, I don't know
Well,
if it's
specifically, if we could just stay on it a little bit longer, specifically when it comes to creation and destruction,
yeah,
I feel like this is why it matters to me, I guess. Like I started with the easier example, but something like creating and destroying, um, like do they have to have each other? Well, I guess destroying, yes, right? I feel like destroying is very much so contingent on something being
on
created.
creation. Yeah, for sure.
But is it true the other way around? That's what I'm not sure of.
I mean, I think it depends on like what you're talking about because like for instance, like working out, like when you work out, you're literally like breaking your muscles down. You're like yeah, you're breaking your muscles down so that they can rebuild back stronger. Um
Yeah,
like
that's a good
but yeah, I
example.
mean, technically you could just like build a house upon like another house, and like there didn't really have to be any like destruction for like that creation like to continue. But um like for instance, this is like one of the examples that kind of I really liked was like oftentimes like something really bad will happen to you. You'll get fired from your job, or like you'll kind of get screwed over or whatever. And that sucks. Like you like are down and out, you're having a hard time. But like if that didn't happen, then like you might not have the option to get like a different job that might be better for you, or like you might not have like yeah. So like they in I believe it's Shiva in Hinduism, but is he's also kind of like represents destruction a little bit, and they like pray to her because they want like the strength, like they want to know that even like when something is destroyed, like there will be creation after it, and they can be grateful for the destruction because like it brought forth something new and something fresh that like they wouldn't have had without it. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think you've brought up some good examples. Um I particularly like the muscle one. Like that makes a lot of sense. And
and did
yeah,
you see
and
what Chris said in the chat?
yeah, the sculptor sort of like basically destroying a piece of rock or whatever it is he's sculpting with in order to create the masterpiece. So yeah, yeah, that definitely makes sense. So but not every instance of creation I feel like has that. And so that's
Right.
like I definitely do see, yeah, there are examples of this all over the place. It's very common. But for instance, creating life, you know, two people get together and they want to have a baby. I guess depending on the relationship, it could be somewhat destructive, but that to me seems
Yeah.
like a completely
But I mean, like
non-destructive.
the mother has to intake food, has to intake like vitamins that has to be broken down, given to the child. Like
Okay.
that could be a kind of destruction. I don't know.
No, that's definitely part of the process and sort of
Yeah.
they're sacrificing a lot of their body to birth a child. That's very
Yeah.
true actually. So yeah.
Yeah.
Try all I might. Maybe I can't prove you wrong.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, why I so badly want it to like not hold. But
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
I think okay, here's the real reason. I think it's because of good and bad, good and evil. I
Mm.
don't want to believe that there has to be evil in order for there to be good. And
Well,
this is
so
just intuition for me.
mhm.
But like, yeah, I want to believe that there can actually just be good.
Yeah. So this is actually where it gets. This is where Western culture messes it up. Yin and Yang has nothing to do with good and evil. It's not supposed to represent good and evil. Everything, there is no good and evil. There just is.
Hmm.
Like everything is like they're like morality is a human construct, and like they're like God would or the divine presence wouldn't see good and evil. Like it would just be everything, and like everything just is, and everything has to happen for every other thing to happen, so it just all is, you know. So it's
Yeah.
like
Well, to
yeah,
me,
the
it
good and
sounds
evil
like
does make
everything
it
is,
hard.
yeah. To me, it sounds like almost that everything is just good. Even destruction is good.
Yeah, right.
Which, you know, falls in line with thoughts about like morality being real and not just a human construct. And I don't know what you think about. Do you think it's just sort of like conventional, humans made it up and it's sort of relative and subjective?
I
Yeah,
don't
you don't
know.
know. Okay.
I don't
Well,
really know. Like I for sure know that when I do things that like don't align with my morality, I feel bad about them, and I can't really like control that. So like from my experience and from the human experience, I think that like good and bad is like we know what things are good and what things are bad, but like yeah, like
Yeah.
from a grand scheme, like it's really hard to tell like what things like had to happen for other good things to happen, or like what, so it's just like
Yeah.
what is good and bad, like what, like yeah.
Um, so I forgot to ask you how long you were gonna stick around. I don't want to like
I'm
waste your time.
I'm I'm good for however long. Chris just asked if he could hop in. I'm
Yeah,
cool with that
that's sort
too.
of why I was asking, because I do have one more question to I wanted to get into with you, but I know
Yeah.
Chris has to like take off at some point.
Right. Yeah, he
So
can hop on. You can
all
ask
right,
me after. That's cool.
let's
Hey
bring
there.
him. Hey, oh, you were already up here.
Welcome back.
Yeah. Hey, just as you were talking, it kind of was you know resonating with some of the things I've been thinking about lately. And
Yeah.
I think what you guys are trying to get at is the distinction between relative and absolute.
Mm.
And I listened to a thing about the 7 Hermetic principles, and one of them is the principle of polarity, and that essentially all of these dualities that we perceive because we are subjective agents, we experience relative reality. We don't experience absolute reality. And
Mhm.
so, relative to what I'm experiencing right now, there are things that are warmer and there are things that are colder. But in the absolute sense, warmth and cold are differences of degree of the same quality,
Right.
just as light and dark are the same quality in different quantity.
Yeah.
Um, and so when we as subjective relative beings perceive the universe around us, we categorize it into all of these dualities.
Yeah.
And I haven't quite gotten there with getting to the non-dual state of mind, but
Yeah.
out there seems
Hard.
to be an absolute reality that um, it, from which perspective these distinctions don't make the same kind of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I it kind of reminds me of one thing I remember reading in Plato, sort of talking about relative size of things. I think Aristotle did too, but essentially like my my chapstick here is small relative to me, but it's huge relative to an ant. So in that sense it's relative, but there also exists a true fact about reality, about I guess whether however you measure it, it stands that this chapstick is a specific size, right?
Yeah.
But just relative to other things, it may be bigger or large or smaller.
Right.
But yeah, that's something I've been trying to, and this is again why I am so intuitively wanting to fight against the yin and yang and this duality, because I think that I'm trying to like structure my brain in such a way to not see binaries, because it seems like there really exists this gradient of existence, but sort of like what you were saying, Chris, our subjective experience interprets things relative to our surroundings and our environment.
Yeah.
And just to chime in on the previous subject about creation and destruction, it reminds
Mm.
me of an Eddie Izzard joke where he was talking about the God of creation and destruction and said, "Can you imagine just being the God of creation? Oh, I created something. Oh, I guess I'll put that in the garage." Like you can't you can't really go around creating things without the ability to then allow those creations to reach an end, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I guess it would depend on how you view the infinite, or if there, I mean, the way I see it, there has to be some sort of infinite or eternal. I don't know what it would look like, but in that sense, that would be the one thing that I guess doesn't have a destruction or an end, I should say. Maybe it has a change, but not necessarily an end.
Well, and I heard someone making this point that the word eternal is often interpreted by those of us who exist within time as meaning going all the way back and all the way forward. But what it really means is being outside of that construct entirely. So it's not that it has no beginning and it has no end. It's outside of that context.
Yeah,
Well, and it could simply be
I like
like
that.
cyclical, right? Just not because we're so used to seeing time as like a linear thing, but yeah, maybe outside of our time, it's nothing like it. So yeah.
Right.
On that note, there's a good Isaac Asimov story called The Last Question, or maybe it's The Last Answer. But essentially, the conditions that are theorized will exist at the heat death of the universe when all matter loses its ability to hold its bonds with itself, and there's no energy left and everything lost to entropy. The conditions will be identical to the conditions that preceded the Big Bang. And so whether that's cyclical or whether cyclical is just something that again we interpret because we exist within time, um, if the conditions are the same at the beginning and the end, then is there a distinction between them?
Um, we're getting deep.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
how much time do you have, Chris?
I can hang out for a bit.
So, um, I guess because I want to go back a little bit to this notion of the relative versus the absolute. Um, and maybe it's just something we can't actually quite get to and interpret, but what are your thoughts on where morality would be there? Because it seems like, yeah, even if we are experiencing it subjectively or relatively, does that take away from an absolute fact that is there that we're trying to interpret?
Well, this is where I kind of become a humanist, and um, you're familiar with the problem of induction in the
Hume,
philosophy of science.
Hume's, right?
Well, just because we've observed the sun
Right.
rising every morning of our life doesn't mean that we can. There's no logical leap where we can decide that that is an inevitability that's going to happen tomorrow morning.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
every single one of us operates on that assumption. We trust the laws of physics to remain the same, even though we can't prove that they will. And so it requires a bit of an irrational logical leap. We believe it because it works for us. And that's kind of what all of our rationality is grounded on. So it's a bit of a shaky ground, but also it doesn't matter because we all do it. And I feel like morality can't be absolutely grounded in the exact same way, but that we all know on kind like based on our emotionality, based on our feelings and preferences, what good and bad are for us, and that your moral sense can be grounded in that intuition just as well as our understanding of reality can be grounded in an intuition that the sun will rise tomorrow.
Yeah, so this
Um,
is it Yeah, it was David Hume, um, the problem of induction, and so this is where this is one of the reasons why, and I do call it a belief, but this is why I do believe there is something called morality that's real or absolute. And it's because it's the same reason I also believe there's a natural reality. Even though the problem of induction stands, and I can't actually know that the sun will rise tomorrow like it has for the last thousands of years, I think it's rational to believe that it will because of our observations thus far. Um, but yeah, I don't see it as like I don't see it that, or I guess morality as on lower grounds than sort of our observations and empiricism, because yeah, like you said, there's no logical way to say that just because this has happened 1,000 times in the past means it will happen tomorrow.
But we understand as humans that we want to live a life where our efforts are reasonably connected to our results, and um, where we exist in safety and we provide safety for those we care about, and we can understand that other humans want that for themselves, and based on those preferences, which I'm not sure that I'm arguing that there's an absolute morality. I think this is pretty relativistic,
Right.
but that
Mhm. Yeah, so
if you can
I'm
extend that understanding to other people, then you can set up a system whereby, for your own self-interest, having what you want to have happen for you, you are willing to submit to some greater authority or some set of that will ensure that for yourself and for others.
yeah, I want to be clear. I think I'm the one here arguing for the absolute take, and because I'm a moral realist, and what I'm trying to do is compare this problem of morality to the problem of induction. And in the same way that we can't epistemologically know for sure that the sun's going to rise tomorrow, the fact of the matter stands that it either will or it won't. Like, there is an absolute reality about that thing happening, whether we can know it to 100% or not. And that's sort of why what I'm just saying that I see morality in that same sense, like just the way that the earth has always been round, well, at least as far as we know. I don't know if either of you are flat earthers, and no shame if you are, but the earth has always been the same shape, or god, that even that's a bull claim. I guess it could have changed, but there has always been a reality of some sort, and it's been the way it was whether we interpreted it or not. um and so that's yeah, I don't know if that made any sense, but essentially I'm just saying I view morality in the same boat, that there's something there, even if all of us subjectively interpret it slightly different. There's something there that we're trying to discover, and that's why there's all these religions and philosophies popping up about it.
Fair.
I
I'm not
think,
sure I quite followed.
yeah, I'm sorry, it was very scattered.
Well, I think I was still trying to gather my thoughts about the relationship between the problem of induction and the problem of moral induction, essentially.
Yeah, so the problem of induction, right? Like, to go to the sun example again, just because the sun rose 1,000 times before doesn't logically follow that we can say 100% it will rise tomorrow, right? Um,
Right.
but aside from that, aside from our logical ability to predict that, it either will or won't happen. There is an absolute reality that will play out regardless of our subjective interpretation of it. And so,
but even tomorrow, when the sun does come up, you might be tempted to say, "See, I was right. We can say that the sun is going to come up every morning," but you've just kicked the can down the road, and you've put one more data point on the on one side of the ledger, but you can never really complete that formula. You can't put an equals sign and say that it's going to be this way on the other side.
right. Yeah, I agree. But it's just distinguishing between our ability to predict and come to certain knowledges versus the absolute nature of what might or might not happen, whether we're observing it or not.
Right.
And that's the absolute part, right? And so that's, yeah. And maybe you just disagree that morality doesn't translate the same way, but I do believe there is an absolute to it, even if we all subjectively interpret it.
Right. It's just, since none of us will ever be able to get absolute, if there becomes a controversy between us of what is moral behavior, we're really only able to resort to our own base intuitions about it. And like, if you had four people on an island and three of them said, if you find a resource and you invest your labor into it, then you're entitled to the to ownership of that resource. And the fourth one says, nah, there's like no argument that the three can make to the fourth person to convince them of that morality. And it ultimately will come down to enforcement of, well, the three of us believe that we're going to believe in property rights, and and if you don't like it, then we're going to throw you off the island.
See, and
You better be a good swimmer.
I do think that there are arguments to be found there. And I think that's what happened with humanity. I mean, that's sort of our story is people
Mhm.
taking more and more advantage and other people attempting to argue and use logic and reasoning and enforcement. Obviously, there's been a lot of wars. Um, but this is like going back sort of to what Socrates was getting at in the Republic is just this dialogue, this art of approaching what is true and what is false, what is the good, maybe we'll be doing it for infinity and we'll never actually find the absolute truth, but I do think we have tools to at least attempt to engage in the art of dialogue and come up with arguments for and against.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that um, despite our relative position, you know, we we nonetheless have that position, and so I'm trying to understand whether we actually agree or whether we're just labeling things differently. Because even if you believe that something exists in the absolute, if you can never access it, what is the utility in holding that belief?
Yeah, I would again going back to the problem of induction. I think the utility is that it works for us to predict, like it works to build knowledge. Maybe one day it'll change and we'll have to change our certain laws of physics here and there or whatever. But as of now, like I mean, you just like look at our progress of humanity. Like it's yeah, the problem of induction stands, but has it affected us that much for our progress in science and like where we've come?
Well, I mean, seen through a Western lens, I can say that science has been transformational, but that notwithstanding, there are cultures on this earth that are not um, guided by that light and are and the problem of how to square our Western liberal values of individual agency and um, you know egalitarianism, like how to reconcile that with other belief systems that don't privilege those values, like
Yeah.
because we exist on the island with people who don't agree with us about what the core values are.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I maybe we should wrap it up here cuz if y'all couldn't tell, like morality's my bread and butter. That's like my favorite thing to talk about. Um but I will just offer you like what I think the best principle for it is, and you'll disagree or whatnot, but and this is what I try to argue for, and even in any other culture, like any culture has their own system of morality, but I think at the fundamental core to every system is the valuing of basically the will, and the will that consents to do things or doesn't consent to do things. So it's not necessarily the killing that makes it bad, it's the non-consensual ending of a life that now makes it murder and unjustified.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that.
Yeah, sorry,
But
sorry, Justin. I took
that's
this conversation away because I'm
Oh
just
no,
super
you're
into
good.
it.
but
You're good.
that still comes down to your subjective sense that the that autonomy is a value to be centered by your worldview, and that violation of that is the moral evil, right?
Yeah, well, so this is where I would say that this value is actually objectively valued across the board by all life. And that's why I said yes, there's relative moral systems and culturally relative subjective thoughts, but at the root of every single moral principle, it's about the will and sort of the consent and autonomy.
Yeah, I don't have the mental bandwidth to try to wrap my head around all this.
Maybe we should schedule something again and sort of prepare our ducks
Maybe
to
some
really
prep time.
talk in. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that'd be cool because I feel bad too. We just railroaded Justin here, and
I'd watch that conversation. That sounds pretty interesting. No, I'm interested in what you guys are talking about. You guys are good.
do you have any thoughts on it? Like, are you said you're sort of agnostic about all of it, right?
Yeah, yeah. I'm not too big into like morals, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
or like, yeah. I don't really know that much, and I don't feel like I can come to that good of an understanding about it. Like, I feel like it is just I feel like it's subjective, but I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know that much.
Yeah, I mean, most people I talk to do, except for God believers. Like, this is the one place where I believe with like theists and Christians and stuff, right? But
Yeah.
most other people I talk to view it that way. So
Yeah.
it's not abnormal. I
It is
just
hard
disagree
though,
with it.
because like I don't think that like you should just go killing people. So
Yeah.
it's like, is it subjective?
And I
Like,
think
I
most
don't know.
subjectivists would
Like,
say that too. Like, you guys, everyone,
yeah,
we've all have like empathy. Like, I can see the arguments for subjectivity and how it still leads to a good life. Like we have this social empathy, we understand cooperating in societies works better for everyone and including your own selfish reasons. So yeah, there's a basis there.
Yeah.
But yeah, Chris, if you're down, let's really get our ducks in a row about it and we can hash it out a little bit further.
Well, I think I've been trying to do my best to um, understand and um, reflect back some ideas that I've received from watching a conversation with there's a guy I really like online. His name's Alex O'Connor.
Oh yeah,
Um,
he's great.
he goes by the name Cosmic Skeptic, but I think he's just going by his name these days. But yeah, listening to him has been really illuminating. But I I hope to have 1/10 of the lucidity and clarity about this stuff that he has.
Yeah, he's
So
very
I'd
smart.
love to hash it out by talking it through again.
And I believe he used to be a realist, but from what I've seen lately, it sounds like he's now a moral anti-realist. So
Yeah, and I think some of it, I think that's some of the stuff that I've been watching. Him talking about how he came to that.
yeah, cool. All right, well, I'll hit you up. Let's plan on it.
Sounds good.
All right, thanks for dropping by, man.
Right. Yeah, thanks for letting me in.
Yeah. Thanks
All
for
right.
coming by.
um, nice little side chat there that we.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The,
that's.
the bee story.
Are you planning on doing any like ethics class or moral? I guess you have to because you're double
Yeah.
majoring.
Yeah.
Oh, you'll get there. You'll.
I mean, like, I've taken ethics and values, but like that was so long ago too that like I
Yeah.
don't really remember that much about it. But and I honestly at that time I was like didn't really care about my degree. I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just like getting my generals done, and yeah, it was
Well,
like one of my favorite general classes. But it
I
was a long.
think sorry, I really we don't have to stick on this much longer, but
No,
I
you're
do
good.
think from a more perspective like your own that sort of believes in kind of a divine source or something to be tapped into, I feel like it
Mhm.
could easily follow even more from there that part of that source is kind of this process of morality or whatever it may be, this force you might call it, I don't know.
Yeah.
um
Yeah, I could get behind that too. Because I mean, uh, like Buddhism, like didn't really start like very like God heavy or very like divine presence heavy, but it always has been about like not causing the suffering of others and like minimizing suffering like as much as possible. So like there is some like morals there even without like necessarily like a God figure
right,
giving those
yeah.
down.
um yeah, like my favorite way to look at it is sort of just how like the pre-Socratics and Plato talked about it, like they're trying to naturally find like what the good is or like what sources are out there underlying our the nature of reality and whatnot. So
Yeah.
anyway, I get too obsessed with that. And
Yeah.
um the last thing I sort of wanted to ask you about, I hope that you have some disagreement here because I'm really interested in people who believe in supernatural things because I'm a naturalist.
Hmm.
And so I'm wondering if there's anything, and obviously, like, we're all philosophical adults here. We're all anyone who is in philosophy understands that we're all agnostic to some degree about everything we think we know or believe. So I'm not asking you to like prove things indefinitely or why you know something, but like, are there supernatural things you believe in, such as reincarnation, ghosts, hell, heaven, anything of the sort?
Like, not really.
Okay.
No. Like it's I don't know like super I don't know my beliefs very like strongly surrounding these subjects, I guess. I don't necessarily believe in like ghosts. I don't really believe in like hell per se. Like I kind of feel like when you die, like you just kind of like your consciousness just disconnects from time, and like time just kind of stops existing, and then like your consciousness, you just like become one with the universe. Um
Okay. So there.
I guess that is, yeah, kind of like
Well, it
supernatural.
doesn't
But I don't know if
necessarily
like
have.
I don't know.
No, go ahead.
I like it's like kind of weird because like it's kind of how I explain heaven in religion, heaven and hell, and like things like that, because every religion has their own kind of like heaven or hell, or like what happens after you die. And I feel like my belief kind of could explain all of them, because it is kind of like heaven, like where you just understand everything and everything like just makes sense and it's all just is. That's what I always say. It all just is, because there's
Yeah.
not really any like describing word for it. Um, which is kind of like heaven, but also I feel like while you're kind of going through that process, like once you are disconnected from time and like there is just your consciousness, like if you like hate yourself, like that's gonna be rough, and like that's
Mm,
gonna kind of suck for you, at least at first, until like you kind of become or like understand it all. But I don't
yeah.
know, like,
So
and I'm
maybe
comfortable saying that I don't know, which I think a
right.
lot of people are not comfortable with, but like
Yeah.
yeah, I don't really know.
Maybe a better way to investigate it a little bit rather than like calling it supernatural. Um cuz yeah, maybe that's just the part that maybe that's the hang up here, because I've even for a while now thought that, you know, even if there is some sort of soul and afterlife, it potentially could exist in a natural reality. It doesn't necessarily require this dualistic nature of natural reality versus, detached supernatural reality,
Spiritual.
like
Yeah.
interacting with each other, right? And so sort of
Right.
the way you described it kind of brings it into the realm of naturalism for me. Like we have this consciousness, essentially, like you didn't call it a soul necessarily,
No.
but maybe there is a natural explanation to it persisting after the body dies. And I mean, I still think I would most likely disagree, because it seems like we require physical brains to have consciousness. I mean, I could
Mhm.
absolutely be wrong. I mean, we're only going
Right.
with what we've observed, but
Right.
does that explain maybe better rather than like looking at it in a supernatural light?
Hmm. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Uh, like, yeah. I would think that, yeah, explains it better. I definitely, yeah, don't believe in like a soul. Like, I don't think that like we're gonna die and then like God's like gonna judge us, and then and like we won't be like this. Like, I
Yeah.
don't think that like there's like any possibility that like I'm gonna die and then just like wake up in my body, but it's like not my body. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, like, and mostly like if I'm being 100% honest, like I'm getting all of this from psychedelics. And
Yeah.
so like it's also kind of like not really fair for me to be like, oh yeah, I had this drug experience and now I know like what the life is like.
Right.
So like from what I've experienced, like I feel like I've experienced what it's like to have my consciousness completely detached from my experience and just be like one with the universe. And I feel like I've had that experience. If that's what death is like, I don't really know. I
Yeah.
like would imagine that that's what death is like, but
Yeah, that's honestly, like I've also dabbled with we've talked, yeah. So I've had these experiences, and
yeah,
they're super compelling, and like I definitely understand that feeling. Um and the biggest part of it is, at least for me, like the time dilation. So
yeah,
it does feel like you're sort of removing your awareness from not only your biological body, but also our perception of time and space and everything. It's like almost melted away. I don't know if you've ever done
yeah,
DMT, but
yeah,
that's like the ultimate, literally melts like everything away except for some presence that you have, some thinking. Um
right,
yeah, and I think, yeah, I'm excited for you to take early modern, man, and sort
yeah,
of talk again after all that, cuz some of the things that like Kant argues for and all that, I feel like could fit this narrative of like thinking and awareness being transcendent and something that has to just sort of be for the rest of physical reality to come into existence.
yeah. And something that I do kind of just want to bring up based off of something that you said just a little bit ago, like you said, like it seems that you can't really have consciousness without a brain. But my kind of idea about it is like while you're dying and like the moment that you die, like because time ceases to exist to you, like you like live forever just like in that moment, and like your brain like well, it's like how you said like with psychedelics like time kind of like ceases to exist and like 1 second can feel like an eternity.
Right.
Like that 1 second that you are dying like could be your eternity. Like it could like you
Yeah.
could just your consciousness could exist within that millisecond or second forever, and that like is what death is like. I don't know, but
Yeah,
it's
that's
kind of my idea
actually,
about it.
I've had that same exact thought before, that like, and this is sort of, where near death experiences could come in and stuff like that too,
Mm.
is like, yeah,
Have you ever seen like videos of people comparing like near death experiences to DMT trips?
a long time ago I've watched videos on it. Yeah, maybe I haven't done enough due diligence with near deaths, but I feel like I've minorly investigated them to a
Mm.
degree.
Yeah. That's like where I got like a lot of this information from, like the experience as well as with I watched like a video on this guy who like compares the two. He has like a lot of experience with DMT, and so he watches like a bunch of videos of people who describe their near death experiences, and he's like just explaining how it's literally exactly like a DMT trip. Like
Yeah.
most of what they describe is like very similar to what being on DMT is like. So yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm with you though. That's cool that you said that, cuz I've literally had the same exact thought that like, maybe your consciousness doesn't actually persist after you die, but the
Mhm.
way you experience it, because you're detaching from time and space and everything, it ends up just sort of being experienced like an eternity. Um but yeah, then I don't know. It would have it seems like it would have to end at some I yeah, it's
Yeah.
a little too crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not
Nobody
crazy
knows.
like yeah.
And you can't know until we die. So I guess we'll find out one day.
Well, there is one more cool. I think I've heard Sam Harris talk about this before. It's sort of like a naturalistic version of a type of reincarnation, but
Mm.
it's not reincarnation in the sense that you are taking your consciousness or your soul and then transitioning to another human or whatever it is.
Right.
It's more of a your current awareness ends, right? Your current consciousness and that's over. But will continue to have babies in the future. Animals will continue to have more and more awarenesses will continue to be birthed. And there's like, I mean, I don't see how it could be against logic to say that at some point along the line, there will be an awareness that pops up. That's not you, but it is you now.
It
It's
is
like,
you,
it's a
yeah.
different person, but you're the one that's aware. Yeah, it's a weird
Yeah.
concept to think about, but
Yeah, I get what you mean though. And something else that like I think about too often that's like it's not necessarily reincarnation, but like it's just something that like I think about a lot. But like your body being broken down after your death, and then like the vitamins and minerals that like make up your body going on to further like perpetuate like the life that grows out of you. So like the grass, and then like animals eat
yeah,
that grass, and then like people eat those animals, and it's like it's not really like your consciousness like reincarnating, but it is like your being, like your
yeah,
exist or your body like perpetuating life and like further uh yeah, putting on life. There's also like your ideas, like the impressions that you leave on people, and then like the way that like your impression impresses those people to leave impressions on other people. And so it's like if you're like kind of like yeah impression or your kind of influence is like still around, then it's like still kind of like your existence is kind of like still going on. I don't know,
yeah.
it's like fun stuff that I like to think about sometimes.
Well, and I mean, that's just on its face true, right? I mean, if
Mm.
nothing else, we could speculate all day long about what could be and what couldn't be, but at the very least, like we do sort of leave an impression, and some last longer than others. Some get statues made out of them. Some were never heard of by anyone but their parents. But,
Yeah.
there is a sort of ringing, echoing impression that stands through time, even if you don't.
Mhm. Yeah.
But yeah,
Cool.
I've exhausted all the things I wanted
Yeah.
to ask you. Uh,
Cool.
if you want, like, I usually, I don't know, give you some time to call me out on something or ask me a question or anything,
Uh,
but
there is just one thing that I wanted to say that I've been thinking about a little bit while you guys were talking. I think that the way that you're looking at yin and yang is a little bit wrong. It's not really meant to be like two forces. It's supposed to be one. Like everything is supposed to have both yin and yang at the same time. They are technically two forces, but it's supposed to be like a unity. It's not necessarily supposed to be like a dichotomy.
okay.
So it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, like it's supposed to represent one, but
Okay.
then like
Yeah. That
it's
makes
just like
sense
the
with the symbol and everything, because like a piece of the one is in the other.
mm,
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, this is my Western Aristotle brain trying to,
yeah,
but yeah, and that's good because that's what I've been trying to train my brain to be less binary and more fluid, because I feel like that's how things are. It doesn't, yeah, it's
yeah.
not just this or that. It's not just yes or
It's
no,
both
right? Yeah.
all the
So,
time, forever. Like,
so
yeah,
that helps. That does make a more gradient system with, so yeah. Thank you for
yeah,
checking me on that. I appreciate it.
yeah, for sure. Cool.
Cool.
But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all I got for you.
All right. Well, hit me up down the road. I mean, obviously we'll see each other, but I'm saying down the
Yeah,
road if you come across
want to come
more
back
different
on.
opinions, yeah, let's hash
Cool.
it out.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming, man, and everyone who stopped by, Chris, thanks for your input as well.
Yeah, thank you, Chris.
All right, you guys take care.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Bye.